West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Tucker Carlson was not just asking questions when he advanced his theory about a false flag attack the other day. He stated as fact that FBI operatives helped organize the attack on the Capitol.
FBI operatives were organizing the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, according to government documents.
He said it as fact. He said there are documents to prove it. And all of that was inspired by a headline from a pro-Trump right-wing website that most folks haven't heard of. It was there on Monday. It was on Tucker's show on Tuesday. Tucker repeated it all week long. He said, well, hey, how can you disprove this, right? He said, go and prove it. Like he was challenging the media to go do his work for him. And now it's everywhere. This is everywhere now. I mean, everybody's heard about it at this point. GOP lawmakers are parroting this completely bogus conspiracy theory. And it's all because of that pipeline from one random website that Tucker likes to his top-rated show, like a domino effect all across the right-wing web. So that inspired me to send some questions to Fox News. You know, this is just reporting 101. This is presumably what Tucker did. Right? Presumably he asked questions to the FBI and to prosecutors and to sources. So I asked Fox News PR executives, did anyone vet Carlson's reporting? Did the Fox newsroom go through his reporting? Did they examine it ahead of time? Why haven't they followed up on it since? Carlson alleged this explosive story. He's claiming this is an incredible bombshell. Where's the Fox newsroom? Why isn't Special Report with Brett Baer covering this story every day? Why isn't Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace covering this incredible claim right now? We know why, right? Because Carlson's out there on his own. Carlson Island. I mean, he does own an island. He's out there on his own, claiming to be telling the truth to his viewers. And the defense from Fox is that it's an opinion show, and everyone knows it's an opinion show. But it looks like news, and it smells like news, and his fans think it's news. They trust Tucker more than they trust real reporters. So what was the vetting? What was the process? Why isn't Fox following up? Why isn't the newsroom digging into his claims? Why isn't the newsroom at Fox trying to prove Tucker's theory? Those were my questions. Let me just check my email and see if there's been no. Still no response from Fox News PR to those basic questions about journalism, just basic news gathering. What do you think? Are there any answers? With me now is David Zerwick, media critic for the Baltimore Sun, and Jennifer Murcia. She teaches rhetoric at Texas A&M University. She's the author of Demagogue for President. And I know you both have a lot to say on this. I'm going to just keep checking my email to see if I can get answers to those questions. What was the vetting process? Why isn't the newsroom following up? Tucker Carlson's alleging one of the biggest stories in American history of the last 20 years. He's alleging a false flag attack by the feds. And obviously we know, David, why they don't reply. We know why Fox doesn't comment. Because Tucker's just his own guy. He does whatever he wants. So is there anyone in charge at Fox News, David?
Brian, I think it's worse than that. And we've had parts of this discussion on this show. I have said that Fox News is crooked and rotten from top to bottom. And sometimes people have pushed back and said, oh, no, Zerwick, it's opinion shows. What about Bret Baier? Blah, blah, blah. No, it is a propaganda operation. It is not a journalistic enterprise. As we both know well, Roger Ailes founded it as a political operation, not a journalistic enterprise, but he was clever and smart enough to brand it as if it was mainstream journalistic cable news channel, much like CNN, but maybe leaning a little right was the way they would. It's not leaning right, it's fallen over on its face into the right way. It's prostrate on its knees before Donald Trump. Fox is rotten from top to bottom. They will never investigate Tucker Carlson on this with their newsroom. And the fact that Bret Baier and everybody who claims to be a journalist over there doesn't is proof of what they are. It's a propaganda operation. Now, since Donald Trump and Lachlan running it now, Lachlan Murdoch, it's become much more of a propaganda operation. Roger Ailes almost stayed between the lines, except he didn't. But this is now, since Trump, an operation, and it's full-blown. Brian, you take it. You talk about this echo chamber. You have right-wing radio. You have Fox Nation, and each of those can go further to the right and a little crazier with conspiracies than Fox wants to go on the air. But Fox News is the linchpin. When you have an audience of 3 million like he does, once you say it on Fox News, it takes on a mainstream kind of status, at least for people on the right. And that's why it's so dangerous.
So let's go into the rhetoric of it and what Tucker's actually doing. Jennifer, you study this for a living. You teach your students about propaganda. So what is Tucker doing when he presents this conspiracy theory? Is he provoking a fight or flight response? And what does that mean?
Yeah, he is, absolutely. We've known, rhetoric scholars like me have known since Aristotle that emotions are very persuasive. If you can tap into people's emotions, then you can get them to do, what you want them to do. Media effects scholars talk about how fear appeals work through the television. And cognitive scientists have explained that it's actually your body's physiology. So your fight or flight response is when there's something dangerous that's in the area. Your body's physiology floods your brain with stress hormones, with adrenaline, with cortisol. And those take over the rational part of your brain, which hijacks your brain. They call it amygdala hijacking.
Wait, so hold on. Let me ask you a question, Jennifer.
Yeah.
So are you saying that first he scares his viewers by referring to the Biden regime and claiming you might be next? So he scares them, and then he presents a conspiracy theory?
That's absolutely right. And so what he has is your attention, right? Because those hormones have made you attend to his message. They've also denied you of your ability to think critically. And so he has your attention, but you don't have your reason. And then he deploys conspiracy theory, and he's excellent at creating narratives that people will believe.
So a conspiracy theory is self-sealing. I saw you say that on Twitter yesterday. What does that mean? This theory about 1/6 was an inside job is basically what he's saying? How is that a self-sealing conspiracy theory?
Yeah, so think of it like a tire that is designed so that if you run over a nail, instead of puncturing the tire and your tire goes flat, it seals itself up. Conspiracy theory works on that same logic. So if you say, the plot didn't happen, they say, you are denying the truth and you are against free speech, and why won't you even let us talk about this or investigate? If you deny the facts, then they say you're hiding the truth from us, right? And so the logic of conspiracy theory itself cannot be punctured, because the conspiracy theory will cover over, just like that nail, will cover over any objection that you make.
So how do we get out of this mess, Jennifer?
It's a big problem. So what I teach my students is to pay attention to your own responses to the media that you consume. Right? So if you feel like your adrenaline is coursing through your body, if you feel on edge, if you feel anxious when you're watching the news, then that news is designed to make you feel anxious. And that's a problem. And I think it's also important, when we talk to our friends and family members who do watch this kind of media, that we can be a little bit more empathetic with them and understand that it's not necessarily a rational response, that they might actually have something like PTSD, right, where their body is being set on high alert so often, that they're walking around constantly in this state of fight or flight.
Goodness gracious. By the way, I just checked my email again. No response from Fox News to those basic questions about the vetting of Tucker Carlson. David, real quick, I have 30 seconds. Did you notice some of these American TV hosts rooting for the Russian President Vladimir Putin during and after the summit this week? They were rooting for Putin.
I did on Fox. Not surprised. You know what? Let me correct that. I was actually surprised, even from Fox. I was surprised to see it, Brian. And I thought, well, they have to say, you know what? It was interesting because it was projection. They were angry that people said Trump was an embarrassment when he was next to Putin. So now they're going to say it was an embarrassment, but Biden's an embarrassment because he wasn't next to Putin.
It is Tuesday, the 22nd of June of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash. A mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. Yes, try it. Well, we had quite a day yesterday here in Southern Oregon, Rogue River to be specific. The mop-up continues just east of us, about a mile or two from the 60-acre wildfire that threatened to increase in a lot more acreage. So we thank our firefighters for suppressing that. But as I was running chores and errands yesterday, I noticed the 4th of July tents being erected. What? It's bad enough that we have all these idiots out here with their illegal fireworks, but they're going to now sell legal fire-starting toys. When the humidity is less than 20%, we have triple-digit temperatures. Why are fireworks totally outlawed? Oh, I know. Business. People rely upon selling those fireworks so they can make money. Well, you know what happens when you have a wildfire and you can't spend your money? Because, well, it all burned up. That's what happens. It all burns up. So, I'm curious how many people are going to be called sheeple for wearing a mask during the wildfires. All those people that kept whining about, you're a sheeple, you're falling for the big government conspiracy. No one's going to get COVID. It's a lie. 99% cure rate. Oh, my God. So, do I make fun of people wearing masks during the wildfires? Do I? I'm just curious how confused it will make the maggots when people are wearing masks. Because already people are sort of like getting on your case for wearing a mask. Well, with the Delta variant raging across the country right now, maybe it would be wise to keep that mask on. And I was joking around with people saying, well, I was just tested for Ebola and I'm waiting for the tests to come back. I'll take off this mask if you don't mind. Yeah, that kind of scares people. But maybe I'll just say, there's smoke in the air and I don't want to breathe it. And maybe people will say, oh, okay. Though I will admit that I would see some, tough guys, we'll call them, who would not wear masks during the most smoky part of the wildfires because, they're tough guys. All right. Tough guys get taken down by lung cancer and irritant particles. It doesn't matter. You'll get hurt, so wear a mask. All right. Okay, enough of that. We have enough other news in the news to go over without, whining about the local problems and the local brainwashing. We will still have the issues with the violent takeover of our government, state and national. They're doing all they can to destroy America and democracy, because democracy, Nazis hate democracy. That's why Mitch McConnell is so against SR1. He doesn't want people to vote. I love how they're out there gaslighting that, getting voting rights means that Democrats are trying to game the system. No, game the system. Yeah, I guess democracy is sort of rigged against Nazism by definition. Nazis hate representative democracy. Why does Mitch McConnell hate representative democracy so much again? I call them Nazis for short. Some people might take exception to that because they have a very particular definition of what a Nazi is. But I don't know. We'll just say I'm being lazy. It's just easier to call them Nazis because that's what they are. All right? And there's no use debating with a Nazi. There's no use being polite to a Nazi. Punch a Nazi every chance you get. I don't necessarily mean in the physical world. Punching a Nazi means going to vote. Of course, they're going to keep you from voting. So how do you punch them? Well, you'll see. You'll see. Nazis will not get away with it. This is America. Okay? That's right. Okay, so Kristen Sinema is against the filibuster because I don't know why. I just don't know why. The filibuster has been used to prevent and suppress every civil rights legislation that this country has advanced. And yet, Kristen Sinema says, oh, we have to keep it. Really? What does that call? What does that mean about you, Kristen? And I know she's not the only one. She's just the face of this weird opposition to getting rid of the filibuster. There are others who are hunkering down and hiding in the shadows because they know that they're on the wrong side of history. And it might mean something to them, at least in getting votes, because I guess that's all that matters. I would say also, since public opinion in Arizona has turned drastically against this fraud, it would be nice if both Sinema and Mark Kelly held a joint press conference to rail against this assault on democracy. It would be nice. Now, I advocated Mark Kelly's candidacy. I would like to see him maybe step to the fore a little bit. I know that everybody's just more than willing to let Sinema and Manchin take the heat, but it would be nice if Mark Kelly stepped up to the podium and, acted like a leader, because they need to. I doubt it's going to happen real soon, but they need to make the step. This fraud is going to be expanding to the other states. It's weird how GOP delegations from Washington State last night took a tour. Do they have to pay for the tour? Is that how the guy's making money? Is he asking for a contract with each of these state delegations to come into their state and pretty much dirty up all the ballots? I don't understand how these ballots with pertinent identifying information, well, not the ballots themselves, but they come with pertinent identifying information of the voters involved, how that can just be handed over to a private entity. I thought that was supposed to be illegal. But if a Republican does it, it's okay. All right. No, we cannot let them get away with it anymore. I would propose that the cyber ninjas should be under some kind of legal cloud, like an arrest. One would think. Now, there was a story about Arizona ballots being trucked. Ballots and identifying information in documents have been taken out of state to a warehouse or some sort of structure in Montana. Why? How is that legal? Crossing state lines? And Mitch McConnell's out there saying, the Democrats' move for voting rights is an assault on our democracy. They just want to hold on to power. Hold on to power? I wish we had some. The projection is very strong with those types. Is it not? It is indeed. Well, enough of this rambling. We do have a curated show, so we have a bit of order. Okay? These morning rants sometimes get disorderly by design. Well, out of design. But anyway, on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, as we begin this fine Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, if Fox News is not a propaganda outfit lying to America, they would have fact-checked Tucker Carlson's claims about January 6th, but they don't. And Stetler laid out why. Well, Stetler and crew. On the rest of the menu, anti-government militant and Idaho Republican gubernatorial candidate Ammon Bundy claimed America is under attack from an invasive species. Yeah, he has a small orchard, and apparently he's got bugs. A trial over whether the GEO Group must pay minimum wage instead of $1 a day to immigration detainees has ended with a hung jury, which basically means the case can be refiled, and it should. And the Supreme Court declined to hear a bid by health insurance companies to seek a full reimbursement from the federal government under a provision of the Affordable Care Act. Yep, decided not to hear it. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the U.S. joined Britain, Canada, and the EU in imposing sanctions on Belarus for human rights abuses. And Russia banned New York's liberal arts institution Bard College as undesirable and will arrest any current or former students, faculty, and administrators. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link right by the social media scroll. And Kelly Lincoln monitors that chat room, so thank you, Kelly, for doing so. If you would look across the page near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the left, hopefully you'll locate our Patreon link. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, And if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and if you could afford to send those funds our way once a month, we're able to stretch those dollars and continue our civic duty in resisting this Nazi takeover of America. And we thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of me, and who am I? Well, I am at Justice Putnam on Twitter. And go ahead, follow me there, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms like Facebook, at least for now. And the show notes and links are a very important part of this multimedia operation that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, so check it out. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by the great Oliver Willis, who is writing for the American Independent. Idaho Republican gubernatorial candidate Ammon Bundy. I like to call him a white nationalist Nazi. You know, an insurgent, a seditionist. I like calling him that. Well, he claimed America was under attack from an invasive species that must be destroyed in a video posted online a few weeks before he declared his candidacy over the weekend. Bundy, a notorious anti-government militant, formally kicked off his gubernatorial campaign on Saturday. He joined 7 other candidates who are already in the race, including Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin, who has ties to the extremist 3%er militia group, members of which were arrested at the U.S. Capitol on January 6. Now, of course, the 3%ers are cops and some former military, maybe even current. Let's not forget that. Now, current Governor Brad Little, who is a Republican, this is Idaho after all, has not announced his re-election plans for what is likely to continue to be a Republican-held seat. In a video streamed online on May 27th, Bundy walked through an apple orchard on his property and noted that the trees were infested with an invasive species. What's happening in my orchard is what's happening in our country, and if we don't get serious about destroying the invasive species, it's already doing terrible damage to our orchard or to our country, said Bundy. Oh, really? Now, Bundy did not specify to what he was comparing the invasive species. He has a long history of criticizing the federal government for overreach and supposedly violating the Constitution, something he has described as tyranny. Really? We cannot afford to have state leadership that lets federal government bully us or walk all over us, he wrote on his official campaign site, because we know that the federal government under Joe Biden and the existing establishment will continue their onslaught against the people, and we simply can't afford to have leadership in our state back down and comply with federal tyranny. This guy's a Nazi. All right, let's be clear. Do not be polite to Nazis. They need to be purged from our society. Guantanamo seems like a good spot. They're infected with something. Let's put them there. In the announcement for his gubernatorial campaign, Bundy accused Joe Biden once again of being a puppet of a deep state that controls him. Bundy has a long history of anti-government activity, including being involved in multiple standoffs, some of them armed, and he keeps getting away with it. Federalist Society judges much? In 2014, Bundy was a part of the standoff between the federal government and his father, rancher Cliven Bundy. The Bundy family claimed that the Bureau of Land Management did not have the right to stop them from grazing their cattle on publicly owned land without permit. Think about that. Property rights, and they're going into somebody else's property, our property, and letting his cattle graze on it for free. As a result, The government attempted to confiscate the cattle, but were blocked by armed protesters and later charged Bundy and his father with conspiracy against the U.S., and those charges were later thrown out after a federal judge declared a mistrial, citing misconduct by the federal government. There are video and still pictures of armed snipers basically targeting the heads of Bureau of Land Management officials. In his gubernatorial campaign announcement, Bundy defended the 2014 standoff, describing it as fighting back against federal tyranny. Oh, really? You know, all of his neighbors around there, Cliven Bundy's neighbors, hate him because they follow the law and they pay the fees and get the permits, and Bundy doesn't have to. In 2016, Bundy led an armed group of anti-government extremists who occupied the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon, which is just east of the mothership here in Rogue River. The standoff lasted for 40 days until Bundy and his allies were arrested. One of the men who helped Bundy to take over the facility, Robert Lavoy Finicum, was shot and killed by federal authorities during the standoff. Bundy was later acquitted in a federal case stemming from the occupation. How does he keep getting away with it? Bundy has also protested several bills at the state level to implement COVID-19 safety measures. In August of 2020, he was arrested for trespassing when he entered the Idaho state capitol and refused to leave despite police orders. Bundy and others were there that day to protest legislation, including a mask mandate, which was intended to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Bundy was removed from the building a second time, one day later, while strapped to an office chair, with police claiming he had been uncooperative. After the incident, he was barred from entering the Capitol for a year. On his campaign site, Bundy denounced the state's handling of the pandemic, claiming Republican Governor Brad Little took Idaho down a socialistic path, introducing over 25 executive orders, with nearly every one of them being unconstitutional elements that violated people's rights and destroyed people's lives. Yeah, work for Russia, you Nazi. This next offering is by the Associated Press out of the American Independent. A trial over whether the GEO Group must pay minimum wage instead of $1 a day to immigration detainees who perform tasks like cooking and cleaning at its for-profit detention center in Washington state has ended with a hung jury. U.S. District Judge Robert Bryan in Tacoma declared a mistrial after the 9-person jury indicated they could not reach a unanimous agreement following a 2-week trial and about 2 days of deliberation. Nobody's happy, but nobody's lost, Bryan told the attorneys afterwards. Democratic Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson sued the Florida-based GEO Group in 2017, saying the company had unjustly profited from running the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, now known as the Northwest ICE Processing Center, on the backs of captive workers. A separate lawsuit filed on behalf of detainees was also filed that year seeking back pay. The judge, who rejected several attempts by GEO to dismiss the lawsuits, consolidated the cases for trial, which he conducted via Zoom because of the pandemic. The judge said he expected the cases would be set for a new trial. GEO, a multi-billion-dollar for-profit prison corporation that is publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, pays workers $1 a day or less to perform essential services necessary to maintain the Northwest ICE Processing Center, Ferguson said in a written statement. A hung jury allows us to retry the claim again in front of a new jury. GEO maintained that the detainees were not employees under the Washington Minimum Wage Act. No, they were slaves. Slave labor. Even if they were, the company said, it would be unlawfully discriminatory for Washington to require GEO to pay them minimum wage, now $13.69 an hour, when the state doesn't pay minimum wage to inmates who work in its own prisons or other detention facilities. Well, that's because they're not private. The jury indicated it could not reach agreement on either question before it, whether the detainees were employed by GEO, and if they were employed, if the law discriminated against the company. The Northwest Detention Center houses people who are in custody, while the federal government seeks to deport them or reviews their immigration status. It can hold up to 1,575 detainees, making it one of the nation's largest immigration jails. Hurley of Reuters brings us this final offering here on the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The U.S. Supreme Court yesterday, Monday, declined to hear a bid by health insurance companies to seek a full reimbursement from the federal government under a provision of the Obamacare law aimed at encouraging them to offer medical coverage to uninsured Americans. The justices turned away appeals brought by private insurers Maine Community Health Options, Community Health Choice, Inc., and Common Ground Healthcare Cooperative. The insurers had said they were collectively owed millions of dollars for each year they did not receive payments the government had pledged to make under the 2010 law, formerly called the Affordable Care Act. Litigation will now continue in lower courts over how much the insurers can claim. The Supreme Court left in place an August 2020 ruling by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit that the insurer's reimbursement for money owed could be offset by other income they received from the government in the form of premium tax credits. The Supreme Court, in an 8-1 ruling in April of 2020, in a related case, decided that the federal government must honor its obligations and pay various private insurers up to $12 billion owed to them. The ruling concerned payments to the insurers via the law's so-called risk corridor program, designed to mitigate insurers' risks from 2014 to 2016, when they sold coverage to previously uninsured people through exchanges established under Obamacare. The latest case was related to a separate provision that requires the government to reimburse insurers for cost-sharing payments, such as deductibles and co-payments. The administration of former President Trump announced in 2017 that it would cease making the payments. Unlike other litigation involving Obamacare, long targeted by Republicans for repeal in Congress or invalidation through the courts, this case concerned only payments to insurers and did not directly challenge the law itself. The court, in a 7-2 ruling last Thursday, rejected a Republican challenge to the law, the third time that the justices preserved Obamacare over the past decade. Indeed. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Hi, and welcome to COVID Quickly, a Scientific American podcast series.
This is your fast track update on the COVID pandemic. We bring you up to speed on the science behind the most urgent questions about the virus and the disease. We demystify the research and help you understand what it really means.
I'm Tanya Lewis.
I'm Josh Fishman.
And we're Scientific American's senior health editors. Today we're talking about the danger of the Delta variant.
And the patchwork vaccine effort around the world.
And lottery tickets or beers for a shot in the U.S. The latest virus variant to grab headlines is called Delta. Why are scientists particularly concerned about it, Josh?
Because it's more transmissible and it seems to be putting more people in the hospital, Tanya. And it's on the rise all around the globe. Delta was first spotted in India and spread quickly to 74 countries. In England, it accounts for 90% of new cases, taking over from the version called Alpha. It's got a bunch of mutations that seem to help it get inside human cells and evade antibodies that hunt for it. Researchers at Public Health England found the chances of people passing Delta around their households were 64% higher than with Alpha. That's a big jump.
England had started opening up more recently, too. Couldn't that have also led to more infections, in addition to some feature of the variant itself?
Yeah, there's stuff going on that can heighten the Delta numbers. People started traveling and businesses and restaurants were opening. But the bottom line here is there's a steep climb in Delta cases. And Delta appears to send twice as many people to the hospital as Alpha does. That's severe illness, such as being unable to breathe. A lot of these people are younger, under age 30, according to research in the medical journal The Lancet. Now, this isn't all doom. Even with Delta, vaccines keep people safe. Health records in Scotland show 2 shots of the Pfizer vaccine blocked Delta infection in 80% of people. Both the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines kept practically everyone who got those shots out of the hospital, early data from England show. So what's this all mean? Already in the US, Delta accounts for 10% of infections. So it's coming. With summer reopenings and people mingling, unvaccinated people could get Delta during the next few months, setting up an ugly fall. Getting vaccinated, the numbers show, is the best route to keeping infections down and getting life closer to normal. More than half of the adult U.S. population has been fully vaccinated now. What's the situation like in other countries?
So far, most of the vaccines have gone to the wealthiest countries. In many low-income countries, less than 1% of people have gotten a single dose. An international effort called COVAX was supposed to fill this gap. Its goal was to distribute 2 billion vaccine doses by the end of this year. But as freelance contributor Sarah Reardon reported for us earlier this week, COVAX is far behind where it needs to be. A big part of the problem is that wealthy countries bought up all the vaccine doses before many vaccines were even approved. COVAX says part of the delay was because it lacked enough funding early on to secure those doses. Even when vaccines are available, they may be perceived as less effective or less safe than the vaccines available in richer countries. For example, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 1.7 million doses of AstraZeneca's vaccine sat idle while European drug regulators weighed the risk of blood clots. By the time the vaccines were cleared for use, they were about to expire, and many were shipped elsewhere. Even if COVAX reaches its goal, it would still only vaccinate 20% of every country's population. So many countries have been forced to negotiate their own deals with vaccine makers as well. There is some good news. Wealthy countries recently pledged a total of 870 million vaccines to COVAX, half of them by the end of this year. But that still leaves a long way to go.
Clearly, vaccination is a life-saving idea. But in the U.S., it's been tough persuading some people to get these shots. Now, states and businesses are using creative lures to get folks to roll up their sleeves, and you just wrote about some free stuff people can get. What kinds of rewards?
Well, several states, including Ohio, California, and New York, have created lotteries with prizes ranging up to $1 million or more for people who've gotten vaccinated. Some states are also offering vaccinated teenagers the chance to win scholarships to state colleges and universities. Other states are trying more unusual approaches. West Virginia is raffling off rifles and shotguns. Washington State is letting marijuana dispensaries give out free joints. And New Jersey and Connecticut have been giving away free beer. These offers may not last forever, so if you've just gotten vaccinated, check for updates. These kinds of incentives work, experts say. A survey of unvaccinated people found that offering a cash reward or saying they wouldn't need to wear masks anymore made people more likely to say they would get a shot. And if the end result means more vaccinated people, that's a good thing. Now you're up to speed. Thanks for joining us.
Come back in 2 weeks for the next episode of COVID Quickly. And check out SciAm.com for updated and in-depth COVID news.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
A social distancing tip.
While the CDC urges you to avoid close contact, like hugging or shaking hands, there are other non-physical ways to say hello. Wave, wink, use sign language, salute, smile, give the peace sign, throw up an air high five, do jazz hands. Remember, stay a minimum of 6 feet or 2 arms length away from others and stay home if you can. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Why is critical race theory in the political crosshairs? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Critical race theory isn't new. It developed as an intellectual movement by legal scholars beginning in the 1970s, and since then has been embraced by other disciplines. Critical race theory, in broad brushstrokes, focuses on race as a social and historical reality, and racism not so much as individual acts of prejudice, but rather as part of our history and institutions, significantly aided and abetted and institutionalized by law. For example, the United States Constitution counted African American slaves as 3/5 of a person. After the Civil War, the Southern states enacted the Black Codes, intended to perpetuate slavery in a slightly different form. Critics claim that critical race theory is unpatriotic and anti-American, and that it's divisive because it highlights how people of different races have been treated differently throughout the country's history. In 2021, Arkansas, Idaho, Iowa, Oklahoma, Florida, and Texas have banned teaching critical race theory in their schools, and many other states as well are considering similar proposals. Eradicating the history of slavery and racism from our consciousness, our schools, and our history, as if whitewashing the past will somehow better enable young people to better and more realistically face the future? Now there's a really bad theory. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1999. That was the day 5,000 textile workers at 6 Fieldcrest Cannon Mills in North Carolina began voting for representation by the Union of Needle Trades, Industrial and Textile Employees, better known as Unite. The victory, later validated by the NLRB, was a significant win for labor in the anti-union South. The union's organizing director, Bruce Rauner, stated, quote, "It feels like we just organized GM. Suddenly, we've got a beacon to show other textile workers that they can do it." Labor historian Leon Fink noted that, quote, "It's a stunning victory for the union. It's the biggest breakthrough in a traditional Southern industry for probably the last quarter century." Then AFL-CIO President John Sweeney remarked that it was the largest union victory in a Southern textile mill in history. The election and victory came after 25 years of struggle and 4 previous attempts to organize at Fieldcrest Cannon Mills. Many noted that the young immigrant workforce made the difference. Conditions had been worsening at the mills. Workers, fed up with production line speed up, punitive decreases in piecework premiums, and company harassment, were compelled to vote union. One worker stated that he and many others were sick of lies management told to keep workers from voting yes in previous elections. Supervisors routinely intimidated workers to vote no with promises of higher wages, or when that failed, threats of deportation. Workers were barraged with various forms of anti-union propaganda. They found anti-union videos mailed to their homes. Some were paid extra to distribute Vote No t-shirts on the shop floor. The company finally recognized the union and negotiated a first contract that guaranteed higher wages, pensions, and other benefits.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 71 degrees Fahrenheit already. Though we are expecting to be much cooler than yesterday, only supposed to be in the mid-90s, though I expect it to be a tad warmer because that's how it usually trends. And should be sunny to partly cloudy today. A stray shower or thunderstorms is possible. Winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then partly cloudy skies tonight with lows in the mid-60s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10. And sunny tomorrow along with a few afternoon clouds, highs around 92 or so. And a stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. If there's lightning, I hope there's rain. Let us hope. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon stands now at 11,535, and deceased remains counted officially at 146. Grass pollen is very high here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is in the upper region of good at 47 parts per million, and that daytime UV index remains very high at 9. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.91 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 58%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 62 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 60 and cloudy. Rome is 91 and sunny. Kyiv is 88 degrees and fair. Kabul is 80 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 76 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 72 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 55 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 60 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The United States, yesterday, Monday, imposed sanctions on more than a dozen Belarusian individuals and entities, joining Britain, Canada, and the EU in applying pressure for human rights abuses and the erosion of democracy. Belarus plunged into crisis last year when street protests erupted over what demonstrators said was a rigged presidential election. Veteran leader Alexander Lukashenko has so far ridden out the storm with a crackdown, his grounding last month of a commercial airliner, and arrest of a dissident blogger on board drew Western outrage. The U.S. Treasury Department, in a statement, said it blacklisted 16 people and 5 entities in response to the Lukashenko's government's escalating violence and repression, including its reckless forced diversion of a commercial Ryanair flight and arrest of journalist Roman Protasevich. The U.S. and its partners will not tolerate continued attacks on democracy and the ceaseless repression of independent voices in Belarus, the director of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control said in a statement. The action targeted close associates of Lukashenko, including his press secretary and the chairperson of the Council of the Republic of the National Assembly, the Belarusian parliament's upper house.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
And even more, staff at Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Russian State Prosecutor's Office said yesterday, Monday, it banned Bard College, a U.S. non-governmental organization, after labeling it undesirable. The Russian Foreign Ministry said in April it would end the activity in Russia of U.S. funds and NGOs, which it believed interfere in the country's internal affairs, in retaliation to an array of U.S. government sanctions on Moscow. The state prosecutor's office said that the activity of educational Bard College represents the threat to the constitutional order and security of Russian Federation. Bard was not immediately available for comment. What does Bard teach? Liberal studies. Oh my God. Russia-U.S. ties slumped to a new post-Cold War. In March, after U.S. President Joe Biden said he thought his Russian counterpart Putin was a killer, while Moscow and Washington recalled their ambassadors. Biden and Putin met in Geneva last week and agreed for the envoys to return. Speaking at a news conference after a meeting with Biden, Putin said organizations which are supported by the United States would contain Russia. Well, wouldn't that be bad? As long as they're a mob government, yeah, it would be bad for them. And blacklisting a liberal arts college because it might interfere with Russian suppression of its own citizens? Yeah, you go ahead, Vlad. You go right ahead. Of course, now anybody caught in Russia who might be a current or former student, faculty, or administrator is subject to arrest. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.